Last year, we got back together. This year, we get back to business as usual for the 5th time. We are in Madison, Wisconsin to crown the fittest on earth at the 2022 NOBULL CrossFit Games. And thank you for joining us, everybody. I'm Sean Woodland alongside Chase Ingram, Mike Arsenault, and Nikki Brazier are down on the field throughout the course on this opening event. Event number 1 of the 2022 NOBULL CrossFit Games is presented by Trek. It is bike to work.
Sean, let's kick the tires and light the fires. We're getting on the road bike again, but this time one of the longest distances we've covered, but we're mixing it with some high volume gymnastics between the toes to bar and chest to bar pull-ups.
Recipe for success presented by Trifecta.
Listen, Reese Bobby once told me, you got to ride with the fear. When you're on the bike, you got to be free flowing. You just got to be with it, not paralyzed by it. High risk, high reward. And it's all going to come down to those first 75 toes to bar to see if you can get to your bike first.
Hopefully there won't be any cougars riding alongside those athletes on those bikes. Mike Arsenault is down on the course that these athletes will be riding. And there are plenty of good seats regardless of where you are here at the Alliant Energy Center. Mike?
That's right, Sean. Great to be back in Madison. And what other sports world championships can you roll out of bed, step out your front door, and have a front row seat to the competition? That's what hundreds of fans in the RV campground will be experiencing momentarily here in event number 1. For the first time in CrossFit Games history, athletes will be competing through the middle of the campground on this gravel road. They'll be biking beside me, and with the athletes jockeying for position, the slick conditions, plus hundreds of screaming fans, it could be an explosive start to event number 1, and I, for one, cannot wait.
Thank you, Mike. All 40 women will be on the field for this opening event, and they will start in their lanes, but it is going to be a free-for-all as they move through this event as far as the rig is concerned. Turi Helgadottir is in lane number 8. She is one of the 2 women in this field who competed at the 2012 CrossFit Games. Cara Saunders, she's the other one. She will be in lane 15 and the only woman who's gotten close to beating Tia Toomey during her 5-year title run. She only lost to Tia by 2 points back in 2017. Laura Horvath in lane number 21 finished second to Tia Toomey last year. And then Emily Rolfe in lane number 38 has won a couple of events here at the games, both of them on the longer side of things. But Tia Toomey going for her 6th consecutive CrossFit Games championship.
Just an unprecedented path she's been on for the last 5 years, and that's to go with the 2 second-place finishes she had to start her career, and she always has a great start in the beginning in event number 1.
Stand by.
The 2022 NOBULL CrossFit Games are underway. The athletes sprinting to the rig where they will complete 75 toes to bar. There will be 4 women per lane to start this thing out. After this, they will exit the stadium and they will ride 5 loops of a 1-mile course, 5 miles total. Then when they get back in, choose any bar that you want. I know you've talked to a lot of coaches leading up to this event. You're going to see a variety of strategies employed by these athletes.
It's wild to see the strategies a lot of these coaches has been talking about their athletes. I've heard big sets of as much as 30 to 40 to as small as 5 to 10, and it's all about navigating these 75 to get off the rig as fast as you can. The problem is that you're going to have some athletes out here just crushing. Look at the center lane we have. Haley Adams, Laura Horvath, Mal O'Brien, Danielle Brandon, Tia Toomey. The center of this rig in lane number 5 is absolutely stacked. But the important thing to understand is that you have to get off the toes to bar as fast as you can, because once you get to the bike, there is not a lot of room for passing and moving. It may be 2 to 3 athletes wide, so getting clear of the field after these 75 is a massive, massive priority for all athletes on the rig.
And most of them are already more than halfway through this set of 75. Matilda Garns right now the farthest through that set of 75. She has 49 done and counting. She's on her 50th rep now. Ariel Lowen, Emily Rolfe, Mal O'Brien, your top 4 right now.
Now, Matilda Garns, one of her big strengths is high volume gymnastics, and a lot of these athletes were vetted with some high volume pulling. When you look at the legless event, that was the same across all semifinals. So if you were successful there, you definitely have some good high volume pulling endurance, but that is a huge strength for Matilda Garns, so no surprise to see that so far.
Tia Toomey, Haley Adams, Emily Rolfe, Rebecca Fuselier are in their final 15 reps here. Take a look at Haley Adams.
Haley Adams got third last year in event number 10 that had the 3 sets of 30 toes to bar mixed with a 1.5 mile run between. Emily Rolfe actually won that event last year in event number 10. So no surprise to see those athletes navigating this well. And Haley Adams, look at that, just a handful of reps to go. This is huge for Haley.
Adams and Toomey now both off. Matilda Garnes was the first woman done with her 75 toes to bar. Got those done in 2 minutes, 18 seconds. Now the athletes have to run their bikes out to the road. As soon as they're on the road, they can hop on the bikes. And as you mentioned, very key to get out front here early. There's not a lot of room on this course.
Exactly. Look how narrow that entrance is. And now once they get to the road, they can go. But you're going to see is a lot of athletes are going to get jammed up underneath the bleachers there at North Park. You can already see the backlog in the back.
Tia Toomey is out front to start this first 1 mile. Then we got a wreck in the back. Not sure who that was who fell off her bike, but that caused a little bit of a log jam, as now just about every athlete is done with those 75 toes to bar, and some of them are struggling to get on the bike here. Tia Toomey out front early, 5 mile loop, so 5 laps.
5 laps, 5 miles. Now this is the only portion they'll have a lot of clean racing. So on the first lap, get on your bike, get on it clean, and just get out ahead of the pack and start to settle into what gear you're comfortable with. These gears have 10, or these bikes have 10 different gears, but now we hit the gravel patch. For this, it's slightly uphill, very loose gravel pit. You want to be in a higher gear, which means you're going to get more distance per pedal stroke and more control of the bike itself.
Laura Horvath, you saw her move ahead of Tia Toomey here on this first of 5 laps, and Horvath starting to open up a bit of a lead. We were talking to Adrian Bosman, competition director for CrossFit, earlier today, and he said that Laura smashed the bike portion of this during practice, looked really proficient during this part of the event.
All athletes got to ride a practice mile lap and get a feel for the course, and Bosman said Laura had a 20-second difference between her and the rest of the field. Now on this backside of the dog park, it's slightly uphill the entire way, but at the top, it's really the last time they'll be climbing at one large chunk on this course.
Emily Rolfe has now moved alongside Tia Toomey. Haley Adams behind them as Laura Horvath leads.
Now, a few things you want to do is, we said ride with the fear. Not a lot of athletes have a whole lot of practice on road bikes, especially off-road courses. They're mostly used to fixed bikes, assault bikes, Concept 2 bikes, Echo bikes, things of that nature that you have in your affiliate. Usually if they're doing any type of biking, you'll probably see something more along road bikes or something we've seen like in the crit in 2018, since it's been a while since we've been on these road bikes. And when you say about being comfortable, there's a few things you want to look for. These bent arms you see with Tia Toomey, Emily Rolfe, Haley Adams, that's a good sign that they're comfortable on the bike. What you don't want to see is athletes locked up in the arms and being a lot under tension during the ride.
Laura Horvath leading as she heads back into the stadium to close out the first of 5 laps.
Now this big straightaway, I think this is a great opportunity to pick up a little speed. It's flat. It's actually slightly downhill on the backside of this stretch. Last year we saw the athletes take this on that 500-meter sprint. I think this is the second event of the weekend. But this is where you can pick up a lot of speed and separate yourself from the field, especially because of that blind turn. A lot of times you'll see athletes in clusters on races, whether it's long distance running or long distance biking, is you want to make moves on blind turns and maybe separate yourself a little bit more from the athletes behind you just by being a little bit further away, try to stifle their desire to want to chase you down.
Laura Horvath is widening her lead here on this first 5-mile loop. This is the second of 5 laps the athletes will make. Emily Rolfe sits in second, ahead of Tia Toomey, Haley Adams, and Matilda Garnes in the back. in the black top, rounding out the top 5.
Unofficially,
They hit
Laura
that
has
gravel
a
patch after the
10-second lead
first
right
turn
now.
off the
Unofficial
road. They'll be
10-second
back
lead.
on the road, and this is that little hill stretch on grass on the backside of this course. And we're talking to Adrian Bosman about where you really should be pushing, and you see Laura getting out of the saddle. Confident riders are not always just stuck in the seat. Confident riders on off-road terrain, it's almost like a bit of a dance between you, your bike, and the terrain. And what you want to see is a lot of movement and shifting of weight as you navigate this course. Or if you're on turns, you want to shift your weight to the opposite side. If you're going uphill, maybe get out of the saddle a little bit. But you don't want to just see an athlete static and stuck in their seat while they ride through this course.
Horvath has about a 10-second lead right now over the three women immediately behind her. Emily Rolfe, Tia Toomey, and Haley Adams, closing out her second of 5 laps.
This downhill portion, again, I could see athletes taking a little bit of rest. Rolfe, Haley, both not pedaling, just letting themselves coast down, give their legs a bit of a break. But Horvath just pumping down these hills. I was talking to Chris Henshaw yesterday, and he felt like there's a huge advantage of really sending the downhill part. A lot of people will coast and think that's a safe course to take, but Henshaw said, this is your opportunity to really extend your lead. You're going faster. You can get almost some free help as far as the downhill portion and what you can put into the bike itself.
Laura Horvath now finishing up lap number 2 of 5. After this 5-mile loop is complete, it will be 75 chest-to-bar pull-ups and then a final 5-mile bike ride.
Now, what's really nice here is that it's a field of 40. All 40 athletes going at the same time. So instead of heats and not really knowing, okay, am I pushing too hard relative to the field in the other heats? Are they going to be able to see what I'm doing? What's great for Laura is that she's in the lead. She's in the lead in a field of 40. So now you can really play to the pace of the pack when it comes to a full field event.
Horvath with 4 career event wins here at the CrossFit Games. We've had bikes at the Games dating all the way back to 2012 at Pendleton 1 and 2. Ruth Anderson Horrell won that event back in 2012. Kristen Holta in 2017 and 2018 won cyclocross and the crit. And then Tia Toomey in 2020, when the in-person portion of the CrossFit Games were held in Morgan Hill, California, won the bike repeater event.
Laura Horvath has an uncanny ability to just put so much power into quote-unquote the machines, whether it's static machines like Concept 2, bike, erg, skis, things of that nature, but even just the regular, bikes themselves. It's such a strength for her, but it's because she works on it a lot.
15 seconds for Laura, so increased it by
and again,
5
there you see, out of the saddle. On the uphills, you want to lower the gear a little bit so your RPMs can speed up, but you can keep that cadence. And a lot of the thing on courses like this is trying to keep the same RPMs or the same revolutions or cadence in your bike. Is that sitting at around 90 the entire time is I would say in an average pace most cyclists will be doing, whether they're on the road or on off terrain. So navigating your gear shifts, right? You want to drop the gears into a bit of lower of the gear on uphill so you can keep your cadence. But once you crest the top of this hill, kick it up, and there's 10 gears on this. Kick it up to the high one and just ride that down this downhill portion, because you're going to go from grass to gravel to the road, and then again another opportunity for you to use that momentum into that turn in a long downhill straightaway to gain some ground on the rest of the field.
Laura Horvath continues to widen her lead. Now Haley Adams has moved into 2nd place. Tia Toomey is in 3rd. Emily Rolfe sits in 4th, and that lead pack is starting to separate itself. Things have really spread out here on this 3rd of 5 laps in this opening 5-mile bike ride.
And it's tough. If you're in the middle, you kind of just get lost in the weeds out there. You don't really see people in front of you. You can't really look behind you so much. So it's on these turns. You saw Haley take a look back. Is on the turns, at least those hard 90-degree ones, is really your only opportunity to see where the field is behind you. Look at that downhill on the gravel. Now, this seems counterintuitive to the casual biker, but faster is better. You have more stability on the bike itself when you're moving faster. A lot of times athletes are a bit gun shy, especially gravel, downhill, not a lot of experience on the bike. But the faster you go, the more stable your bike is. See, Murano on the right is that look at the cadence. That she's in a low cadence. That means she's doesn't have a lot of confidence in the bike itself, how fast she's going, but there's not a lot of speed. Laura Horvath. In fact, one thing, look at Laura's hands. Laura's hands are just resting on the handles. Why? Because she has chest to bars coming up. She just sent 75 toes to bar. She's trying to use as little grip in arms as possible. She's sit back more in her seat, putting more weight in the backside of the bike, but letting her hands just rest there, getting set for those chest to bar pull-ups we have coming up.
That's Michelle Marin, who just got lapped by Laura Horvath.
I said Marin is just in that low gear, high cadence. And a lot of that is just comfortability and experience. If you haven't experienced the bike, usually a lighter gear feels better. But as I said earlier, so you have more control in the higher gears, you have more control at higher speeds.
14-second lead over Haley. 14-second lead over Haley.
Bottom left is Laura Horvath. She is in the lead. Bottom right, Tia Toomey and Emily Rolfe behind her, and it's about a 15-second lead now for Laura Horvath. She's on lap 4 of 5 in this 5-mile bike ride.
I really like the race Horvath is putting together. It's hard to lead from the front. That's the other thing too, Sean, is that it's really hard to just sit out there seeing no one in front of you, where the people behind you get to sit there and just tether to you and pace off you the entire time. They can see if you speed up. They can feel that. They can adjust. You can't. You just have to sit there and hopefully that your pace is enough to maybe keep yourself in the position you are, and not enough where people can just pace off you the entire time. It's a really, really tough thing to lead from the front. The nice thing is that it's laps, right? You don't get full view the entire time, but those 3, 4, 5 athletes behind you, they can sit there and just tether you, right? It's a little fishing line out there, and they can pace themselves based off you. So it's really hard to set the pace all by yourself out there in front.
Approaching the 15-minute mark here of the opening event of the 2022 NOBULL CrossFit Games. It's a busy day today. 4 events, 500 total points on the line here on Wednesday. A special thank you to the Trek Bicycles and Trek for providing the bikes and helmets that our athletes are using today. Visit trekbikes.com to check out road, mountain, electric, or fitness bikes, including the bikes that the athletes are riding here today. Laura Horvath closing out lap
1, 2, 3.
number 4 of 5. So 1 lap to go before she will head back inside the North Park and then complete 75 chest to bar pull-ups before a final 5-mile bike ride. It's like Haley Adams is now in 2nd place, but it is a wide lead right now for Laura Horvath.
And I think coming in at 75 chest to bar pull-ups, last year in the final event, there was 90 chest to bar pull-ups in the middle of the event that had rowing and then lunging with the barbells. She had the 2nd fastest split of any athlete, any female athlete on the chest to bar pull-up. So Laura Horvath is very well suited, at least on paper, for this event, but there's a much bigger difference between on paper and performance on the field. But just a great setup for Laura Horvath and her skill set.
Haley Adams sits in 2nd place. Tia Toomey is now in 3rd. She has a pack of athletes starting to pile up behind her. Emily Rolfe, Emma Lawson is there, Alexis Raptis, and Matilda Garnes all now behind
between Laura
Tia Toomey. So Emma Lawson
6
starting to make a move towards the front here.
Haley and the chase pack.
Fifth and final lap for Laura Horvath, looking for her 5th career event win here at the CrossFit Games.
Pacing wise, you're trying to look at the speed that you'll see in these athletes is at, I think, in a range from 15 to 20 miles per hour. You're looking at 3 to 4 minutes a lap if they can keep that pace. So each lap taking somewhere between 15 to 20 minutes in that range times 2. I mean, that time cap of 50 minutes, depending on how well you can navigate those gymnastics, it's not the longest time cap in the world as far as the volume of work that they have in front of them. And again, navigating an off-road course. What's nice about this course relative to 2017 is that the turns aren't as tight. Right, there was a lot of tight turns in 2017 during cyclocross. Here the turns are pretty wide open, so that affords athletes to actually, again, use a faster pace than maybe they're comfortable with. As Horvath is already lapping another athlete in the field.
That's Elena Karatala-Sanahuya, who's now the 2nd athlete that Horvath has lapped. And Laura's going to very soon be making her way back inside the North Park. She's got to get off her bike and she has to run it back into her lane, and then she can go to any pull-up bar that she wants.
Now, one subtle thing Laura did right before the end is she shifted her gears down. Right, so she's been riding in a very, very high gear this entire time because she's had speed. She shifted her gears down so that when she gets back on this bike, it starts at a light gear so she can get that cadence picked up very quickly. It's those little details. You ask, how do you beat Tia-Claire Tooby? Usually the answer is you don't. But if you want an opportunity, you're really just going to have to do the little things right.
Second lead for Laura Horvath. She is onto her chest bar pull-ups. Here comes Haley Adams. Adams is going to get to work right next to Horvath. Laura got her 5-mile bike ride done in just under 16 minutes, 15:58 for that 5-mile loop.
Now in set 1 of the 75 toes to bar, play to your strengths, be slightly conservative before you get to the bike. On these chest to bar pull-ups, Laura Horvath has not stopped since she got on the rig. This is where you can take some chances. I said high risk, high reward. You had to get off the toes bar early to get some clear water. We already saw that mess up a huge pack right there in the beginning because of one athlete falling off their bike. For Laura, you're not coming back to the pull-up bar after this, so you can afford to nearly tap out your grip strength and pulling potential to get back onto that bike.
Haley Adams has pulled even now with Horvath on this set of 75 chest bar pull-ups. The two of them are through 38 and counting. Adams with about a rep lead on Horvath right now. Tia Toomey sits in 3rd. Matilda Garnes is in 4th, followed by Emma Lawson and Alexis Raptis. And Brooke Wells is on her chest bar pull-ups as well, as is Mal O'Brien and Lucy Campbell. So most of the field now back inside the North Park. Churning through these 75 chest bar pull-ups.
Laura Horvath, the right side of your screen, taking a big break after that last set. Haley Adams, however, has been very quick on her transitions, but Tia Toomey is ripping off giant sets on the pull-up bar.
Tia Toomey only has 15 remaining. Haley Adams has 16. Emma Lawson, Matilda Garnes, and now Laura Horvath are your top 5 on this portion of the event. But if Laura Horvath gets off the pull-up bar anywhere near any of these athletes, you got to like her chances on the bike.
Absolutely. Just what we saw on those first 5 laps and what we heard about her lap test in practice.
You saw the number there for Tia Toomey, has just been dominant, especially these last 3 years. Now, some of that does have to do with the formats and the amount of athletes that she was facing. But she has won 27 events in the last 3 years. There have been 46 total, and now she is done with her chest to bar pull-ups and back to the bike. The Tia Toomey back in 1st place. Here comes Haley Adams in 2nd. Toomey is back onto the bike. They can hop back on as soon as they get to that paved portion.
To high gear, Tia is starting with. Same with Haley Adams. That's what I was talking about with Laura shifting down. The problem is Laura isn't off the rig yet.
Alexis Raptis is now in 3rd. Horvath has now just finished her chest-to-bar pull-ups. There's Emma Lawson, and here comes Laura Horvath.
There she is. That high cadence to get things started. As she gets her RPMs up, she'll shift her gears down. And the only reason why that is not so much transition time that you're saving, but it's really energy that you're saving right from the start. The legs are probably still a bit pumped up from the first 5 laps. It's a good flush to get back on the bike, that high cycle rep, that high RPM, and then you can use the downhill portion of the straightaway to kick those gears back up to a higher gear.
Tia Toomey was able to make up 45 seconds on those chest-to-bar pull-ups. Haley Adams right behind her, but on the bike, Laura Horvath, the first 5 miles, she did that in 15:58. Toomey, her time was 16:46. Haley Adams now in front of Toomey on this first of the final 5 laps that they will have to complete.
And that's a push when you look at that time differential of what she gained on the chest bar pull-ups and what she had lost on the previous bike.
Or 20 seconds behind.
Now the challenge here for Haley and Tia is now that they're in front. Now they're the ones being chased. They're the pace setters. And what's different on a road bike, and this sounds obvious, is that if you're used to Concept 2 bikes or Echo bikes, things are the monitor that tells you your RPMs, your cadence, your speed, your cals, your watts. They don't have these. You are purely going by feel. And the only problem is going by feel is if you don't have a familiarity with the bike itself, is that you're just riding blind. You're just hopefully just leaning on your fitness to get you through the speed of this bike at the end.
Haley Adams opening up a lead now on Tia Toomey.
Hey, Tim, do you read me? Well, I'm just...
Tia looking over her shoulder, seeing if anybody's coming out. That's
Laura
what I said.
was 20
This
seconds
turn on the
behind.
backside, this little loop is your best shot to see where you're at. But Haley Adams is just putting a lot of distance on her and Tia. Look, the cycle rate too. We talk about RPMs a lot, and what that matters is the amount of energy that you're putting in your bike. Really high cadence for Haley Adams. Nice, free. She looks loose. She looks comfortable. I mean, look at her face. Just a nice, relaxed position to be in. Tia working a little bit harder. Not necessarily a bad thing, but you can just see the difference between the two in this first lap.
Haley Adams now finishing up her first of 5 laps. Tia Toomey sits in second. We have yet to see Laura Horvath here on her second 5-mile ride, as she was the fastest on the first 5-mile ride. More women getting on the bikes. There's Danielle Brandon, Ellie Turner, and Haley Adams is lapping a large number of athletes right now. Rebecca Fuselier and Turi Helgadottir there. Here comes Tia Toomey. They'll have to navigate through this.
And that's something these, Haley and Tia didn't have to worry about in the first part of this, is now you have to worry about passing other athletes, navigating other athletes in the field of play. And we said this is a narrow track. It's about 2 or 3 athletes wide at best. Where will that matter? Maybe in your last lap or two. Can you outrace the person behind you while weaving your way in and out of athletes? Because now there's going to be bikes scattered all across this course that will play a factor as far as how you navigate your course between the other athletes on the field.
Emma McQuaid and Danielle Brandon behind Haley Adams. They are on their first laps. Adams is on lap number 2 along with Tia Toomey now on the left side of your screen.
Tia still in that high cadence, or that high gear. See, her cadence is a bit slower than Haley. And just looks different. Look at the difference between Haley's face. It's usually a great way to see how relaxed athletes are. Her arms are bent. She's not over the handlebar too much. She's sitting back in the saddle. That means her weight distribution is where it needs to be for this off-road biking specifically.
Haley Adams in her 3 years as an individual competitor here at the Games has never finished lower than 6th.
Great first event for Haley's skill set, especially. Long endurance, machine work, high volume gymnastics. Classic opening test you see at the CrossFit Games, something a bit outside the box relative to maybe your affiliate yourself outside the box and outside the box of just normal training that you would do. Just when you think about classic CrossFit training methodology, but that's the CrossFit Games. The first event is always something a little bit outside your skis. Curious to see all the other things we'll have over the weekend, obviously with Adrian Bosman taking over the programming this year.
Haley Adams taking a look over her left shoulder, and she has a really solid lead. That is Ellie Turner, who's on her first lap. Tia Toomey coming into view. She sits in second place.
I was talking to Chris Henshaw, and we were talking about really how to navigate your pacing throughout this, how to separate yourself from other athletes. And a lot of endurance athletes see when you ride in like groups, or you run in groups or ride in pelotons, so to speak, as far as trying to separate yourself from other athletes. And there's always this tethered effect if you're close to someone that you can use to pace off of. We saw Haley do that with Laurel Horvath on the first 5 laps. But to see this blind turn that Haley just took, there's another one here. This is a great opportunity to do what they call breaking the elastic. And that's that confidence tether to the athlete that you're chasing. But if Laura or Tia turns the corner and Haley just starts pedaling down harder and extends the lead, you can do what is basically breaking the elastic, that psychological tie between you and two athletes. If I turn the corner and I've been chasing you and you've already put 10 more meters on me, I may just lose all interest in trying to stay with you. And that's a big thing for Haley on all these blind turns. This is where she should be, just hammering down. Blind turn, hammer down, get up this hill as fast as I can. Put a little bit more distance between those chasing me in hopes that I can just break their spirit of trying to run me down.
Haley Adams on lap number 3 of 5 right now, approaching the 30-minute mark. Tia Toomey sits in second, and it looked like Emma Lawson had moved herself into third.
I was curious how the spread of athletes over the course would affect your riders, but it's so spread out, it's basically negligible unless, you know, someone takes a blind turn or just rears off course all of a sudden. And I think Haley found the perfect gear just to keep that cycle cadence just nice and quick, light pedal strokes. I mean, look at Karin Frey over behind her. Look how that's a slow pace. She's putting a lot of effort into each pedal stroke, where Haley is just, again, that nice churning rhythmic cycle.
Let's send it down to Nikki Brazier with more on Haley Adams.
You know, I had a chance to catch up with Chris Henshaw, and he said that paying attention to her legs is not the only thing that shows that she's very relaxed out there right now. Her arms are also very relaxed, and that says that she has zero tension in her upper body, which means that this intensity level is not incredibly labored for her.
Almost through 31 minutes here. Haley Adams continues to lead. It's Tia Toomey in second, followed by Emma Lawson in third. It's the third of 5 laps for those 3 women. Toomey and Lawson.
And Lawson's just chilling. And for Lawson, this is a savvy move for a rookie athlete here on her individual debut. Obviously, she was a fantastic team competitor, but she's just sitting on the heel, sitting on that back wheel of Tia, just letting Tia do the work. I mean, you look at Emma's, she's barely pushing on the pedals. And this is a really big advantage. Drafting is a thing, even in cycling, like we saw in swimming last year, or any other implement like this, is that if you can get on the back wheel, you can do, the percentage is very low, but the amount of work you have to do, you almost have to worry more about riding up into their back wheel. That's how much of a pull you get from this front athlete. So Emma Lawson just chilling on that back wheel is a veteran move for a rookie debut.
She finished first in the 16 to 17-year-old division in 2021, and then in 2019 she was third in the 14 to 15-year-old division.
I mean, look at the difference, Sean. Look at Tia Toomey. Look how hard she's working right there. Look at Emma Lawson behind her. She has to slow her cadence down a bit just so she doesn't run into the back wheel. Just absolutely chilling.
Use code NOBULL Games at checkout to receive a free NOBULL towel with your purchase. Head to the site to learn more and take advantage of this offer while supplies last. Order minimums apply. Online only. Gift with purchase differs from international customers.
And you see the advantage that you have here from Emma Lawson just sitting on the back wheel of Tia Toomey. If you're in the back of the pack, say, I don't know where Laura Horvath is, but you can use these athletes on the field to do the same thing for you. You can catch up to one, use that, and, to reference another Will Ferrell movie, is that you can slingshot your way around a lot of these bikes. And oftentimes you'll see this in, say, triathlons, like specifically, USA triathlon events. Is like, you can't really ride in pelotons, you can't draft on athletes. But one thing I used to do back in my triathlon days is that I wouldn't necessarily draft, but I would slowly ride up behind and coast and then slowly pass athletes on the course. And I would just use athletes as little lily pads, right? Get up to them, coast for a couple seconds, and then use them to really pass myself around them and catch the next person. So you can leapfrog a lot of these cyclists your way through to maybe help you catch up to this lead pack.
Now it's Emma Lawson's turn to pull Tia Toomey. The two of them have stayed relatively even this entire 5-mile trip.
Emma Lawson looks so relaxed, not labored in her breathing. Haley Adams the same way.
Haley Adams, the gigantic lead right now over both Lawson and Toomey. And she closes out lap number 4.
And we know it's coming in events 2A and 2B. We got some heavyweight. We got some heavyweight and some very high intensity sprints. This is a much needed potential 100 points for Haley, because listen, in a balanced test, and if you're not a balanced athlete, you've got things you're great at and things you're not. And if you're great at something, you have to maximize that point potential when you have an opportunity to. So this is something that is much needed for Haley, knowing we've got some tough stuff coming up in the event just after this one.
500 total points up for grabs here on day number 1, the most points that have ever been available on the first day of competition. You mentioned the next event. One single event, but 2 different parts worth 100 points each, as Haley Adams starts her 5th and final lap. Adams looking for her first career event win here at the CrossFit Games.
For Haley now, the distance that she's put herself between Emma Lawson and Tia Toomey is enough for, in a lap, she just needs to make sure she stays on the bike. Be a little bit more wary of not the turns and the downhills, but the people around you, because usually athletes that are in the bottom of the pack are not super confident riding the bike, which means they can get a little left and right as far as their confidence. And that's really the one thing you got to be careful of. What you don't want to do is be conservative in your pace. Faster is better. Faster on the bike is more stable on the bike. Higher gear on the bike means more stability within the pedal strokes and your contact between the bike and the ground itself. Don't be cautious too much, because a little slower tends to be a little bit more dangerous as far as stability is concerned. So don't back off there, but do be careful of the athletes around you on the course.
Haley Adams with about a 12-second lead over the 2 women behind her here on this 5th and final lap. That's Tia Toomey and Emma Lawson.
Good look back for Haley. Perfect time to do it. That good little 90-degree turn so you don't have to completely look back. It's a bit of a dangerous thing to do is look back when you're riding the bike.
Let's go down to Mike Arsenault, who's out there at the campgrounds.
Well, we talked about Laura Horvath dominating the first portion of this workout. She is really struggling right now. The last time check I had, guys, as we moved through the campground, she was 36 seconds behind Haley Adams after leading back into the North Park by 15 to 20 seconds for the second portion of the gymnastics work. So she's really faltering here on the bike.
And a lot of that, too, may just be the speed that Haley's putting on. Because if it's 30 seconds, she was 45-plus seconds behind Haley and Tia. So that means she's at least closed the gap. But those 75 chest-to-bar pull-ups is where she really lost the time. I think her bike is still pretty decent relative to her first 5.
Haley Adams is off the bike, and Tia Toomey and Emma Lawson are right behind her. They still have to drop the bikes and sprint across the finish line. So this could come down to a foot race after all of that. Adams has ditched the bike. She's going to work her way to the finish line. Here comes Tia Toomey. Emma Lawson behind her. Haley Adams, first career event win at the CrossFit Games. Tia Toomey's going to finish second, and 17-year-old Emma Lawson will take third. Just a 3-second win for Haley Adams. And here comes Laura Horvath, followed by Alexis Raptis. And that looks like Mal O'Brien there as well. So here comes Horvath. So despite falling off the lead pace, has a fourth-place finish within her grasp, but it's going to be a race with Alexis Raptis. Raptis is just ahead of Horvath, and it's going to be Raptis in fourth, followed by Horvath in 5th. Mal O'Brien will take 6th, and Matilda Garnes is also across the finish line.
The nastiest little end wrinkle to this event is that sprint across the football field after you just sold out for 5 miles on the bike.
Here comes Danielle Brandon, looking to take 8th place in the event.
What a great start for Danielle Brandon. I'm looking at her as one of my top athletes to look at in events 2A and 2B coming up.
And now Cara Saunders, all smiles as she picks up her water bottle, waves at the crowd, and will get across the finish line. So Saunders is going to finish 10th in the event. And last year, she made it to the games, but she was just getting over COVID-19. She had to withdraw after a handful of events, so it's good to see her back at full strength. And now more athletes making their way into the stadium. We have a sprint to the finish. Emma McQuaid is in the black top. Brooke Wells and Gabby McGowan in there as well.
And one thing Cara's probably pumped about, because in 2017, where she got second by 2 points to Tia Toomey, she took 23rd in cyclocross back in 2017. So a top 10 finish. I think she'll take that to start the weekend off.
Well, Carolyn Prevost is across. Here comes Elena Caratala-Sanahuya, as we've now had 16 women finish. Sanahuya is across. 40 minutes, 56.19 seconds for her. That's Jacqueline Dahlstrom. As Ariel Lowen just came across the finish line. There's Bailey Rail. She can take her time getting across the finish line. There's really no one else with her. Bailey Rail in her second career appearance as an individual at the CrossFit Games. She took 18th last year. And she will take 20th. Sayer Kaya is across in 21st. There's Freya Moosbrugger.
Just over half the athletes in the field have completed this.
Karin Freyova edges out Moosbrugger there at the finish.
I tell you, there's not a lot of wiggle room in the back if you're trying to do a foot race at the end, trying to run through the line.
Here's Ellie Turner. Still plenty of time to go before we hit that 50-minute time cap. Haley Adams, your event winner. First career event win for her here at the CrossFit Games as an individual. 38 minutes, 23.74 seconds. And what looked like was going to be a comfortable win.
Yeah.
There were some nerve-wracking moments for her there at the end. Julia Cato is in, and here comes Amanda Barnhart.
Yeah, the tough part about leading from the front, being mixed in with another cyclist and not being able to see behind you. And that's what I said, it's easier to chase than it is to run away. And man, Lawson and Toomey closed that gap so hard in the final lap.
Amanda Barnhart and Cato, and athlete at the far end of the field, pardon me.
Maybe Turi.
I think that was Turi Helgadottir. It was Turi Helgadottir. She comes in 25th. Barnhart gets 26th, and Cato will take 27th.
Paige Powers just came in.
There's Rebecca Fuselier. Danny Spiegel is across. Alex Gazan and Paige Semenza also finishing. Paige Powers, Rebecca Fuselier are over the finish line as well. So Laura Horvath and Haley Adams. Horvath on the bottom left led after the first 5-mile bike ride, but it was Laura Horvath and Tia Toomey and Emma Lawson as well, who made up a ton of ground on those 75 chest bar pull-ups. Then Haley Adams hung on for the win.
And that's really where the separation came, Sean. It was those chest-to-bar pull-ups, because Laura made up 15 to 20 seconds on the bike. So Laura still had a great second bike, but she was so far behind after those 75 chest-to-bar pull-ups, she just couldn't close that gap.
There's Solik Sigurdardottir.
So many rookies, especially in this women's field, Sean. We looked at the lineup and just all the R's down the list. A lot of athletes getting quite a wide-eyed awakening to the first event of these 2022 NOBULL CrossFit Games.
Elisa Fuliano finishing up. Haley Adams, Tia Toomey, Danielle Brandon, and Mal O'Brien, all on your screen right now. All expected to be in contention for a podium spot, as is Laura Horvath. Alexis Raptis, really impressive finish for her. 2 rookies inside the top 4. Emma Lawson finishing 3rd. Raptis was 4th in this event.
The thing about Danielle Brandon, an 8th place finish. Long aerobic tests for her haven't always been her best finishing places, but with Danielle Brandon's track background and her strength overhead, an 8th place finish in a long aerobic test like this, I think, is huge for Danielle Brandon. She's one of those athletes is a bit of a wild card as far as podium potential and, obviously top 10 talent. But getting 8th place finishes in events where she's traditionally not as good, I think, is one of those things we need to keep our eye on as we look forward to the rest of the weekend.
Here's Victoria Campos.
Campbell making her way. Victoria Campbell making her way.
Less than 3.5 to go before we hit the 50-minute time cap. And we have 2 athletes left to finish after Campos is across the finish line. It's Sung Young Choi and Michelle Marin who are still out on the course. And here comes Marin.
this time cap, it's long enough that everybody has an opportunity to finish this. And what I mean by that is everybody should experience the full force of this event, because sometimes you'll see time caps that are a little bit longer in events that may be tougher, where the volume is the really big factor in the event. 10 miles of biking, 75 toes to bar and chest to bar pull-ups respectively. And so that every athlete has to go through this. Whereas a tight time cap, they may just like, all right, I don't have to finish the bike. That means they get to take a break. Yes, they're gonna get last either way. But with a time cap, that basically gives them enough window to experience all of this physically, I think is important. Later, you know, we have always seen time caps throughout the years where the time cap almost dictates the intensity of the event. This one is quite the opposite.
Choi and Kohlenbrander are still out on the course. Choi's getting ready to finish up. Kohlenbrander is behind her. You can see her at the top of your screen. So less than 2 minutes to go.
Kohlenbrander is one of those athletes we're looking at as far as, you know, she has one of the top end strengths in the field. And depending on your balance as an athlete, there are some sacrifices to that specificity as far as your talents are concerned. So if you are a, you know, top tier strength athlete, sometimes there's a cost to that as far as balance in your fitness.
Sung Choi taking a bit of a spill there, trying to get her bike sorted.
And the thing there, she was holding the middle frame of the bike. If you're going to put one hand on, it's really actually the bike seat that you want to have your hand on. If you're going to have your hand near the handlebars, just grab the handlebars themselves.
Finished 34th last year at the Games, making her second consecutive appearance here. Qualified out of the Far East Throwdown. And that leaves Christine Kohlenbrander with 45 seconds to go before we close out this event. And Kohlenbrander will be the final woman to cross the finish line as we close out the opening event at the 2022 NOBULL CrossFit Games for the women. 4 total events today, 500 points up for grabs, and Haley Adams grabs the first 100 with her first ever event win at the Games. And as you mentioned, Chase, this one came down to what happened on the pull-up.
It did, and you know, Laura Horvath had a great first 75 toes to bar, which got her out in front, and had a wonderful first 5 miles on the bike. In fact, she had one of the fastest first 5 mile splits on the bike itself, but it was the chest to bar pull-ups where she lost nearly a minute to Tia Toomey and Haley Adams. And then when Haley Adams got on the course, she extended her lead for about 4 laps, 4.99 laps. And then at the very end, Tia Toomey and Emma Lawson made up a substantial amount of ground. It came down to a foot race towards the end, and this is what you want to see. You want to try to get on the podium for the first time, you're going to have to take some wins on your way to the top.
Let's send it down to Nikki Brazier with Haley Adams.
Congratulations, Haley, on your first event win here at the CrossFit Games. You pulled ahead early on that second bike route. How were you able to stay ahead?
I just relied on my fitness. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't road bike a lot before this, so I was just sending it and trying to be athletic.
Yeah, it worked, it worked. When you enter day one with that leader's jersey on, what does it do to your mentality?
I didn't think about that. I don't know.
Well, now you're here, you obviously can adapt. What do you do in your training to make sure that no matter what is thrown at you, you can handle it?
I just try to put myself back in training and know that I've done everything in my power to prepare for this moment and to trust myself.
Congratulations, thank you.
Thank you.
Haley Adams, 38 minutes, 23.74 seconds, just edging out Tia Toomey by 3 seconds. And then 2 rookies inside the top 4, 4 inside the top 10. 1 event down, 3 remain here on day number 1. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, the men bike to work at the 2022 NOBULL CrossFit Games. day of competition for the 2022 NOBULL CrossFit Games continues here at the Alliant Energy Center in Madison, Wisconsin. Thanks so much for being with us, everybody. I'm Sean Woodland with Chase Ingram. Nikki Brazier and Mike Arsenault are out on the course for event number 1, presented by Trek Bike to Work.
All we need is some granola out here for the athletes. Sean, biking to work. We're going green for event number 1. 75 toes to bar, 5-mile bike, 75 chest to bar, 5-mile bike. You can really do yourself a favor by getting out early on those toes to bar.
After watching the women go through this event, how, if at all, has that changed the recipe for success presented by Trifecta?
They said ride with the fear. That means you're going to have to stay comfortable. The fear is going to be there. Don't be paralyzed by it. High risk, high reward. Take some chances on the toes to bar. Get out ahead of the field early, and then when you get out on the course, fast turns, strong downhills, you're just going to have to push the pace the whole way through.
All 40 men on the field for their opening event. In lane number 6 is Alex Vigneault, who finished 8th at the games last year. He is dangerous when he is healthy. Lazar Jukic, keep an eye on him in lane number 19. Had a fantastic debut last year as a rookie, making his second appearance at the CrossFit Games. Roman Krenikov, for the first time competing at the CrossFit Games in person. He's qualified every year since 2018. And finally, Yonakoski will be in lane number 38, making his 8th career appearance at the CrossFit Games. But everybody is chasing Justin Medeiros, who is looking for his 2nd title of Fittest on Earth.
Heavy is the head that wears the crown, Sean. You were a no-name rookie coming into 2020. You had all the expectations to do well in 2021, and now you are the defending CrossFit Games champion. It's going to see if he can hold off the field this weekend.
Let's send it down to Nikki Brazier.
Yeah, guys, according to his coach, Justin Kotler, Ricky Garrard is the one to watch in this event. They say that this is his event to win. They believe that the differentiator on this event is the bike, and well, Ricky has a ton of experience on 2 wheels. At one point in his life, he actually considered a career as a professional BMX racer, so they're hoping to shake out the nerves with an event win here on day 1 of the Games.
At that point, Sean, nerves has been a big issue for Ricky Garrard this year in competition. No more apparent than event 1 of the Torian Pro, being in front of a home crowd, not sure how the reception was going to be. Now back at the Games, in an event that he can do well in, there's a lot of pressure on Ricky Garrard.
Think back to 2017 or the cyclocross event. That was Ricky Garrard's event win. And he is back for the first time.
Oh, there you go. Looks a bit relaxed. You talk to a lot of athletes, Sean, is that a lot of athletes, they've got events that they know they're going to do well at and when ones that they don't. And I think to an athlete, when you ask them about what's more nerve-wracking, something you know you're going to do poorly at or something that you have the potential to win, and at the majority of the time, it's actually the potential an event you're going to win that tends to add a bit more pressure to the moment itself. And it's event 1 of the Games. He's back from a 4-year ban. This has been his life's goal to get back here. And now you have an event that he can potentially win. The stakes are high and the pressure is on, but to see him relax at the front, the best thing he can do is to stay calm and just do what he knows he's going to be good at.
Opening event for the men underway here at the 2022 NOBULL CrossFit Games, and we start with the 75 toes to bar, 4 men per lane. On the pull-up bar, Ricky Garrard getting to work on his set of 75. After this, they will grab their bikes, head out to that 1-mile loop and ride 5 laps before coming back into the stadium for 75 chest to bar pull-ups in the 5-mile bike.
I talked to Justin Kotler. What was the plan for Ricky? 30 to 40 off the bat on toes to bar is the goal. So big chunks for Ricky Garrard is at least the goal. And we said, you got to get off the rig early, probably earlier than you want to, but you got a 5-mile break for your grip going into chest to bar pull-ups. But Ricky, here's the problem. Ricky is in the back half of the rig. There is a ton of athletes between him and the exit as far as the stadium is concerned. Getting ahead of everyone, getting that bike away from the traffic. On the women's side, we saw it took one person to derail 20 athletes that fell off their bike. You have to get off the rig first and get some clear riding lanes going into this first 5-mile bike.
Justin Medeiros right now sits 5 reps behind Ricky Garrard, who's through 45 of those 75 reps.
Toes to bar in a row for Ricky Garrard.
Top 2 men on the screen, Lazar Jukic also in that mix. Mentioned Lazar, who as a rookie last year finished 9th overall. Garrard with 56 down. Jukic creeping up on him, as is Medeiros. Well, Georges Karavis is there as well, as is Roman Krennikov inside the top 5 right now, early in this opening event.
Last year, event number 10, we talked about the toes to bar running event, which Lazar Jukic won, which had 90 total toes to bar in it, and 3 miles of running. So this is an event that is a decent predictor of who should fare well, as Jukic is making a push on Ricky Garrard.
And Jukic on the far left of your screen, he's right behind Justin Medeiros. Even with the lead pack here, Justin Medeiros is off, as Noah Olson was the first man to get off the pull-up bar. So Olson first out onto the course on the 5-mile bike ride.
Captain come out hot. Noah Olson. And this is where I said it's so valuable to get out ahead of the field. Just get some clear riding space. It's a lot of treacherous, almost took a wide turn in the back.
Pat Vellner is on the left. He's towards the front. Georges Karavis is there. Justin Medeiros, Ricky Garrard, Lazar Jukic, Roman Krennikov. He is on the right side of your screen. He has a tattoo on his chest. We mentioned Roman. He has qualified for the CrossFit Games every year since 2018, but has been unable to make it to the United States to compete in person. Finally was able to do that this year. And earlier this week got to meet his newborn son for the first time since he has been here in the United States for an extended period of time to train and get ready for the game.
I can't even imagine the emotions that Roman is going through from a competitive side, waiting so long just to get here, and now you are. He's been watching this on TV and documentaries for the past 4 years, but to meet your son for the first time days before the event, I mean, wow, just a flurry of emotions that he's gonna have to keep in check for the next 4 days.
Noah Olson and Justin Medeiros out front. Medeiros moving ahead of Olson on this opening lap. 5 laps that they will ride around this 1-mile circuit, and then it's back into the North Park for 75 chest bar pull-ups. 4 minutes gone by.
See Medeiros out of the saddle. This is the only climb they're really going to have that is of any substance in this 5-mile course. So Krennikov on the right side making a pass here after that hill sprint, and you wonder, where can you make up some time? Where can you make a pass? And it's really going to be that little uphill stretch right there on the backside, and that's exactly what Roman did.
Roman Krennikov has moved himself into first place. It's much tighter towards the front early on here for the men than it was for the women. Pat Vellner also in that lead pack.
You might see some more aggressive riding, not just in pace, but between the other athletes here in these top 8 to 10. This first lap is, I know they got some practice runs the other day. They got to get fitted for their bike. That's another thing people might not really understand, is that how it can have an effect on an athlete's confidence. Because if you get your bike fitted correctly, it's a much higher seat than you are used to or even thought it would be. And there is a level of nervousness being that high on a bike, especially if you're used to the machines that you have in your affiliate. And being that high on a bike, going at these speeds, navigating these turns, these gravel roads, there's a lot of things in here that can shake an athlete's confidence. And surprisingly, being really high above the ground on a properly fitted bike could be one of those things they're not used to.
Lead athletes finishing up that first lap. Pat Vellner right now in 5th place, and for more on him, here's Mike Arsenault.
Well, one person hoping for a good result here on event number 1 is Pat Vellner. He has an average event 1 finish of 23 in his CrossFit Games career. So I asked his coach, Michelle Letendre, what the message is for event 1 this year. She said, well, the event 1 struggles are often due to swimming. However, I would say to Michelle that Pat Vellner had a 35th place finish in 2018 in the crit. That was a road bike. This is more of a mountain hybrid bike, so it should be a little bit easier to navigate than the bike issues that he had back in 2018, but we'll see if he can improve on that 23 placement average here in event number 1.
And remember, back in 2018, Vellner had a mechanical issue with his bike and had to get it swapped out. That was part of that problem there, but he does have a history of not finishing well in event number 1, but there is no water in sight here.
Yes, no large bodies of water here out on the bike course.
Roman Krenikov continues to lead. Justin Medeiros sits behind him, followed by Noah Olson, Lazar Jukic, and Pat Vellner.
In that uphill portion, you see Roman putting a bit more effort into the bike, maybe separate the pack a bit. But we saw this as far as, we saw Emma Lawson do this in the previous heat on the women, is just ride that back wheel of Tia Toomey for a couple laps. And look, there's huge advantages when it comes to drafting on the bike itself. You see Ricky that's separate from the pack. What he should do is, it's worth the effort it's going to take to race up, spend a little extra intensity and catch up to this pack, because if he can connect there, he can take that rest that I think he needs. I think Ricky tipped the scales a little bit too much in those first toes to bar, those 45 off the bat. Then he's ended up, 2s and 3s towards the end. And that's going to jack your heart rate up big time when it comes to the bike. So I would say for Ricky, he wants to catch up to this pack so you can take a break. The only one working right now is Roman Krenikov. Everybody else behind him is getting a free ride around the bike park.
6 men in that lead pack: Krenikov, Medeiros, Lazar Jukic, Noah Olson, Pat Vellner, and Jonakoski. And here comes Ricky Garrard behind them.
Finishing up the second lap. And a lot can happen out here. We saw the distance that Tia and Emma closed on Haley in just 1 lap. So a lot of different things can happen. And the tough thing for Roman is that he's basically been pulling these guys for 2 laps as Medeiros has now moved in front. Now it's going to be his turn to pull the pack. He's trying to make a little bit move. Now, a good move you can have here is on the straightaway. Clean road, slightly downhill, kick it up into a high gear and just separate yourself from the field a little bit if you can before we hit that gravel patch and that slow, steady climb to that midway point on the course.
Lap number 2 is now down, as Justin Medeiros is ahead of Lazar Jukic. Jonakoski has moved into 3rd, followed by Vellner. Now Roman Krenikov has dropped back into 5th in that lead pack.
And I believe right off the back of the pack, I believe that's Oldest Ubnix, as he's pushed really hard in that back stretch to try to catch up to him. Yeah, it is Oldest. Now, one thing, a great story from Oldest at the Lowlands Throwdown is that there was an event, it was the long endurance test that they actually had. It had running, handstand walking, deadlifts with a fat bar and a row at the end. He couldn't get a ride to this facility, so he got on a bike and rode his way to the stadium and ended up winning that event. So is he good on a bike? Depends if it's a pressure situation and you don't want to miss your event and get a 0.
Special thank you to Trek Bicycles for providing the bikes and helmets that our athletes are using today. You can visit trekbikes.com to check out road, mountain, electric, or fitness bikes, including the bikes that the athletes are riding today.
I believe we're just on the heels of the Tour de France finishing about a couple weeks ago. And in some sense, you see the CrossFit Games mimicking, different stages, different tests, big climbs, fast sprints. And it's really that, despite the number of events we may have over the course of the weekend, the extra event is the totality of the test itself.
Jonakoski just squeezed between Lazar Jukic and Justin Medeiros to take the lead on this 3rd of 5 laps. This is the first of 2 5-mile rides that they will have in this event. 75 chest to bar pull-ups a weight, Not a bad day here in Wisconsin. There is some rain in the forecast, so there is some humidity out there. But just right now, 78 degrees, so not super warm out there yet.
And what that provides when you have this cloud cover, this overcast day, it actually provides decent visibility for these athletes. Normally, in this morning event, this sun would be cresting right over the tree tops and hitting them right in the face. So this is actually a nice conditions for this course. We see Yona resting his arms there on the downhill. And what we're seeing is these athletes, is everyone's taking a turn. Everyone's trying to see how athletes are going to respond to pushes. We saw Roman do it, Medeiros do it, and now Koski. And you're really just getting a feel of how the athletes around you are going to respond to certain pushes, where I'm going to speed up, and get a feel for the course. And after these 5 laps, they're going to have a great roadmap of how to navigate this on the second half. So we're going to see a lot more, I would say, focused and detailed racing on the second 5 laps than we will on the first.
And we saw this in the Crit 2018, where some athletes figured out, like, hey, we can work together. There's a little bit of communication going on up the front there of athletes. Hey, I'll take the turn in the lead here.
Yeah.
You go ahead.
Well, in the Crit in 2018, the only thing we saw was Moonweiler looking behind everybody. It's like, get your butts to the front. I'm not going to pull this pack for 10 miles of a Crit race. And that might be the communication. As you see, Karenikov is leading the second pack. It's a pack of 3. And you can work together with just 2 people. It's really all you need. There is a massive drafting benefit to working in pairs. What you don't want to happen is to be isolated alone on the course. With 2 people, you can make up some ground, as the front 4 are definitely pulling away. It was a grouping of 7.
It's the 5th bike event we've had in CrossFit Games history. The first was back in 2012, Pendleton 1 and 2. The bike showed up again in 2017. Ricky Garrard, of course, won that event before he was disqualified at the end of the competition. Adrian Moonweiler, as you mentioned, Chase, won the Crit in 2018, and then Matt Fraser won the bike repeater in Morgan Hill, California in 2020. And now Lazar Jukic taking his turn at the front. Yona Koski sits in second, Medeiros, and now Pat Vellner in 4th.
3 different cadences you see between Dukic, Koski, and Medeiros. Vellner needs to make sure he keeps touch with his pack. As I said, you don't want to get left by yourself, stuck in no man's land between a few grouping of athletes.
This is the 4th of 5 laps.
Jukic is working pretty hard. You see that slower cadence. He's got it in a high gear. It keeps the speed up, but there's, it's a point of diminishing return, but depending on, your stamina that you have in your legs. But the effort per pedal stroke, Koski behind him, a bit higher cadence, Medeiros as well. Now they're allowed to do that because of the drafting effect they're getting from Luka Jukic.
So Lazar Jukic looks like he's waving.
Look at that. Sean, you're totally right. The communication is, Jukic said, okay, I did my lap. Kosi looked back at Justin and said, now it's your turn to get in front.
Here comes Medeiros. He's going to move to the front of that pack with Lazar Jukic. Koski's going to move even now with Jukic, and we still have Pat Vellner sitting there in 4th place.
And sometimes, a casual fan will look back and it's like, why even help each other? Why work together when it's an individual-based event? This isn't like they're working in teams. I mentioned the Tour de France earlier, when you have teams of about 6 and they work together to keep the speed in the total. This, you can call this a front peloton portion of this with just 3 people. But you're coming into 75 chest-to-bar pull-ups coming into this. I would happily work together with 2 other athletes if this means this puts me in a top 3 finish for the event. How it shakes out towards the end is great. What I don't want to do is be in a 15 or 20 person pack. So it's worth working together, because if you work together, you're sharing the load distributed among the 3 of you, which means you're only working hard 30% of the time. You're going to get a nice break on the back end of that. So it's better for the group itself to work together and be successful for themselves individually as well.
5th and final lap, as Medeiros looks like he's going to wave Koski up front.
You got a little sequence going. Koski, Jukic, Medeiros. Medeiros is conveniently waving Koski up to the front for the uphill portion of this course. I like him getting out of the saddle. And that's really just to get that cadence back up for the uphill portion and settling back down. You don't have to be out of the saddle dancing on the pedals the entire time. It's not a very long uphill, but keeping your cadence, and if you need to get out of the saddle to do that, do. Jukic's on the front pack here, still that slower pace.
And if you look at that pack behind him, Roman Krenikov leads Noah Olsen and Uldis Upniks, and Pat Vellemer, who is all by himself between the two of those packs, has now decided to work with those three guys and get a little bit of a draft. So now athletes starting to group up here, as we see Ricky Garrard in that third pack. Jonakoski surveying the field as he, Medeiros, and Jukic are set to finish up their fifth and final lap. And then this was the crux of the event for the women, those 75 chest to bar pull-ups. Now here's
that communication back. You see coming in these turns, Koski will turn his head, asking the next athlete to come in front. And this constant passing, right? Waving someone forward, Medeiros waving up Luka Jukic, Jonakoski. And a lot of that is by feel. You can't put an exact distance on it. But listen, you're going to be in the front. You're going to start feeling the legs burn, that lactic acid starting to build up, and that's just, okay, wave them on. I've hit that saturation point of what I want to going up to this point.
Koski, Medeiros, and Jukic are off the bikes, and they will work their way back into the North Park for their 75 chest to bar pull-ups. Use code NOBULL Games at checkout to receive a free NOBULL towel with your purchase. Head to the site to learn more and take advantage of this offer while supplies last. Order minimums apply. It's online only. Gift with purchase differs for international customers. Koski has put his bike down. Jukic is onto the chest to bar pull-ups. Here comes Jonakoski. And Justin Medeiros, Noah Olsen getting to work as well. The Jukic is through 12 and counting. He is slightly ahead of Medeiros and Koski.
Now you start to look back. I know it's been about 16 minutes since these athletes tackled those 75 toes to bar. But depending on how far they tipped into that red, as far as their grip is concerned on the toes to bar, that can still linger a bit, even after that bike.
Jukic and Medeiros are both through 34 reps. Koski is right behind them. Roman Krenikov starting to creep up, as is Uldis Upniks. There's Roman Krenikov, who now sits in fourth place, about 9 reps back of Jukic. Let's go down to Nikki Brazier, who's down there in the North Park.
Guys, I was able to catch up with endurance coach Chris Hinshaw on exactly how these chest to bar would affect this long endurance event. He said that the amount of cycling in the event is really going to affect the athlete's stamina on the chest to bar, because actually the muscles being used are similar. You may think it's on the legs on the bike, but the reality is that's not quite true. It's really arms and grip and shoulders. Now that muscular stamina fatigue is going to hurt the athletes more that don't do as much outdoor riding, and you're really going to see that separation start in their next bout on the bike.
Thank you, Nikki. Lazar Jukic and Jonakoski are dueling for the lead right now. Justin Medeiros and Saxon Panchik has moved up significantly here on this portion of the event. Noah Olsen also inside the top 5. Jukic and Koski now in their final reps. Koski is done, and he will be the first man back to the bike. Remember, Jonakoski last year ran away with the opening event.
Starting to see some raindrops on the camera. And really the most dangerous time for rain as far as road conditions is right at the start. That water starts to hit the ground, some of the oils and stuff naturally from the road rise to the surface, whereas if it's been a rain for a constant amount of time, it usually washes off. But the most dangerous time for rain is right at the beginning, so the athletes may need to be careful in these turns, especially on the pavement.
Mentioned last year's opening event, Jonakowski won that by more than 2 minutes over Lazar Jukic. They are right now the top two in this event as they are off on their first of 5 laps to close things out.
It's starting to rain a little bit more. Looking outside, you can see it coming down. It's light, but you've got 2 pretty significant turns on the pavement. It's going to be a lot more slick. Now, the way these tires are set up, it's an all-terrain tire. Allows for a lot of different conditions, whether it's gravel, grass, or road. But when you mix the rain in, things you got to look out for. Obviously, when you get to the pavement, as I said, the oils on the road just from cars driving, that rises to the surface immediately once the rain starts. Now, as it gets heavier, it tends to wash off the road. Another thing is the grass, Sean, specifically on the downhills. Grass is going to get real slick, so things athletes may need to look for, depending on how much rain we get, is actually tire tracks. Falling more in tire tracks in these conditions, it just creates a more impacted surface. If you start seeing, if you start swerving outside of that, you're hitting grass that hasn't been touched yet. So following tire tracks is going to be your best friend when it comes to the grass portion in this back area.
I believe that is Saxon Panchik, who has moved up behind Lazar Jukic. Let's send it down to Mike Arsenault, who's out in the elements at the campground.
This is the hardest it has rained so far this morning. However, not impacting the pavement just yet. There's still plenty of grip on the pavement. However, it's a little bit breezy as well, so the rain not falling straight down, depending on what direction the athletes are facing, it is hitting them in the face. Unlikely, though, that the rain at this point will impact any of the biking for the rest of the remainder of this 5 miles.
The wind thing, that's actually a big deal on the bike itself, especially when you look at this course as far as what Mike was talking about, because there's so many turns. So that wind's going to hit you almost from every different direction. So your ability to adapt to those conditions on the fly is going to be a big way to really separate yourself if you can use that to your advantage.
So that is Spencer Panchik, who has now moved behind Lazar Jukic. Spencer Panchik in 3rd place now in this event, looking to move into 2nd to have a chat with Lazar.
You're talking about Koski winning the opening event last year during the swim paddle, but Koski was 3rd in the cyclocross event back in 2017. Lazar Jukic was 1st last year in the toes to bar running event. So you have 2 athletes with different skill sets, but both highly conditioned, great with long aerobic tests, as well as those high volume gymnastics. So this head-to-head battle between Jukic and Koski with Spencer Panchik in the mix as well. Now, what's nice for Jukic and Panchik is at least they can work together to try to track down Koski. We saw the same thing on the women's heat when Haley Adams was alone at the lead, where Emma and Tia worked together in that drafting sense to catch up to her.
The 2nd straight year, Jonakowski is all by himself in the lead in the opening event. Colton Mertens is on his opening lap. So Jukic and Spencer Panchik both passing him. This is lap number 2 for them.
The big thing for Spencer and Lazar is just you got to work together, and you have to be seamless the way you do it. Don't wait to take a turn in the front or to pass off when you're about tapped as far as your intensity is concerned. A lot of quick rotations back and forth. Think of it as a time thing in your head. 10 seconds, 10 to 15 seconds of work, then sit back and coast.
Another look at the opening event bike to work presented by Trek. We are on the final portion of last 5-mile bike ride, 50-minute time cap here. Jonakoski opening up a lead on both Spencer Panchik and Lazar Jukic.
I was listening to Chris Henshaw's critique of the bike, and the upper body fatigue is a real thing, especially when you're off-road, because I mean, even on a Concept 2 bike, sitting on that for 20 or 30 minutes, just your arms locked in that extended position gets fatiguing. That's why you see Koski putting his forearms on the front and giving his triceps and arms and shoulders a bit of a break, because the turns, the terrain, going uphill, downhill, there's a lot of upper body. You can just see the arms working as Koski, again, resting his arms, trying to give his arms a break, because there is a way you can utilize your upper body to your advantage when it's picking up speed or going uphill, taking turns on this course. There's a lot more upper body than one would think. Mostly just due to the nature of the bike itself, road bike versus anything static.
Lazar Jukic and Jonakoski, your top two. Spencer Panchik sits in third. And we could have a situation for the second straight year. It's Koski followed by Jukic in the opening event. Koski drafting a little bit off of Travis Mayer now. Mayer a lap behind Koski. Augustin Riquelme is back there as well.
I mean, catch a draft when you can, when you're up by yourself. Now we have a lot of other bodies on the course. They're just going to be spread out all over. You can ride up, you can rest there for 2 or 3 seconds. Your pace isn't going to diminish too much. And as I said, on the winner's side is just, take that little slingshot around, race up to the next pack, hang out for 5 seconds, pass around, race up to the next pack. You're just out there playing the fishing game now. Set the hook, reel them in, move to the next group.
Koski with about a 20-second lead over both Spencer Panchik and Lazar Jukic. But remember, we watched a lead like that disappear very quickly for the women.
Disappear in less than a quarter mile. It was absolutely insane to see how much distance Lawson and Toomey made up on Haley on the back half of this field.
If Jonakoski can hang on here, he'd be looking at his 4th event win at the CrossFit Games.
Man, Koski is putting a lot of distance on him and Spencer Panchik, and it seems kind of funny to think about, but what Koski might be able to do is, get in this pack. You see him passing Fikowski. Get in this pack, get ahead of these guys, and just lose yourself. It's really hard to, it's really hard to figure out who's who. Just from here on the outside, but if you can get ahead of these people, not only do you, like we said, is you separate yourself from Spencer and Lazar, but maybe they won't even be able to see where you're at anymore, and then the chase is done. It spoke about what Chris Henshaw said about breaking the elastic, that competitive tie between you and the athletes chasing you. If you can hit a turn, lose yourself in the pack, they can't see you anymore. The race, or the desire to chase you down is over.
Yeah, Jonakoski right there next to Andre Uday and Keelan Henry. There's Brent Fikowski. Just on the left side of your screen, you just saw Lazar Jukic and Spencer Panchik pass out of view, and no surprise that the two of them are working together as they trained together at the CrossFit Mayhem in Cookeville, Tennessee for a few weeks leading up to the CrossFit Games.
How many athletes were out there leading up to it? I can only imagine what that environment was like prepping for the CrossFit Games. Start to see some water. You got to be a little careful in this turn. It's downhill, it's tight, and then you follow it right with another one.
More rain starting to come down here at the Alliant Energy Center. We passed the 30-minute mark.
interesting for Koski is being in that pack, he got to take a little bit of a breather, not much. But now see Mayer still on his heel after that first lap. So Mayer has not slowed his pace down, even though he is a lap behind.
Chase says we're seeing the rain come down a little bit harder, starting to see a little bit of slickness develop on the pavement. We're seeing a lot of athletes grouped together, and the cliche is that you can't win the CrossFit Games on day one, but you can certainly lose it. Is it worth trying to push to the front of a 4 or 5 person pack for the extra handful of points with the risk that you could fall and potentially take yourself completely out of the competition here in event number 1? What strategy would you recommend for these athletes as they wrap up this second portion of the bike?
It really is a great question when you look at the potential of things to go wrong outside of your control. We was talking about earlier about Haley Adams being alone by herself and getting caught up in a pack like this, is that it's a lot of risk you take putting yourself in a large group of athletes that don't have familiarity on the bike. If these were seasoned pros on the bike, really nothing to worry about. Everybody knows how to work together. Everybody knows how to use their bike in whatever condition. But you have a lot of novice athletes here at the CrossFit Games, and especially on a course like this on a road bike. So yes, I would say it's almost safer for you to separate yourself from a big pack like that, 6 to 7 athletes, to get out of a potential of something going wrong because of the athletes that you're riding with that don't have the experience in these conditions on these bikes.
Jonakowski continuing to look over his left shoulder to see where both Jukic and Spencer Panchik are. And he's going to be content just to hang out with Andre Uday and Travis Mayer, who are both a lap behind Koski right now.
Koski moves himself ahead of the pack. Again, you see him resting his arms down on the downhills especially. Nice on the downhills is that you need more arms on the uphills. The downhills, you see, if they had aero bars, which is that it's usually an attachment on the handlebar that you can rest your forearms and be a bit more aerodynamic as well. There's a two-parter to that, is give the arms a break, make yourself a bit more aerodynamic, utilize the downhill to your advantage. Koski looking around, asking for help. Again, a slight downhill on this back stretch. Nice flat surface. Good opportunity to gain some speed, to gain some momentum, because once they turn into the RV park again, you've got loose gravel and you got wet grass. No, that's not right. That's not right.
This has got to be a mistake for Spencer Panchik. He's running across the finish line. Jukic is going to turn around. There is some confusion here.
There's no way that was it.
Jukic and Panchik were definitely behind Jonakowski. This is most likely not correct. They will have to get this sorted out. So there was some confusion there, as both Spencer and Lazar were absolutely behind Jonakowski. Koski is still on the course.
Yeah, no, they are missing a lap.
They're going to have maybe
two laps.
So that is going to definitely factor in. Now, we have had a case like this in the past where an athlete finished early. Think back to, I think it was 2017, where Cara Saunders.
Yeah, but man,
that is a much different situation.
There's a big difference between 3 overhead squats and 2 miles potentially of biking, because all these athletes are right around 15 to 16 minutes. If you just doubled that, that's 32 minutes. They didn't finish 150 reps on the rig in less than 3 minutes. So they are definitely a lap behind in maybe 2. And I'm surprised. Honestly, this is kind of an unprecedented situation about what's going on. And I think that look on their face is...
I think they realize maybe something's not
going
right
on
here. Because unless we absolutely missed a pass on the course, Yonakowski should still be your leader.
And, you know, we're obviously, I'm sure that something's on fire somewhere behind the scenes, but now you got to look at how are you going to approach this? What are you going to do? I mean, obviously we don't want to speculate, but yeah, definitely those athletes completely missed a lap as Yonakowski is coming in. Because if you're operating about 15 minutes, which was he was doing 2 to 3 minutes on there, so Koski should get an event win here, but you know, skipping an entire mile on the course, you can't just do simple math of how a lap took, but it's going to have to be something they figured out on the back end.
Well, here is Yonakowski, who is sprinting with
Ricky Garrard.
Garrard. So there's some confusion here at some point. We'll have to get this all sorted out, but from what we were able to see, Yonakowski was in the lead.
I think
So right off the bat,
I don't
we've
know
got some
what's
confusion
happening
here in the
right
opening
now.
event. We believe Yonakowski won that event. Here comes Roman Krennikov across the finish line. So we're going to have to get this all sorted out at the finish of this event. But I think we can say with relative certainty that both Spencer Panchik and Lazar Jukic skipped a lap. I don't know if it's the same case for Ricky Garrard.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people missing a lap at the moment.
But we were following Yonakowski throughout the entirety of that final 5-mile ride and never saw Ricky get close to him, or Spencer,
Ricky
or Lazar Jukic.
Was way behind on the chest bar pull-ups as well. Lazar was finishing and Ricky was at about 40 reps. Oldest, I think that's a legit lap.
We have had 12 men cross the finish line. Dallin Pepper was the latest. Now Saxon Panchik and Noah Olson are across. Others who have finished include Justin Medeiros, who may wind up finishing second. Jeff Adler came in. Roman Krennikov is in. Bjorn Gudmundsson, Willie George, Moritz Fiebig, and Uldis Ubnis, the other men who have finished.
Now I'm looking at some of these lap times, 13 minutes, 13 minutes, 13. No, there's
Alexander Corona, Will Morad are in. And Will Morad right now is listed at 16th. Jay Crouch, Jason Hopper, and Alex Vigneault are in. Here come Cole Sager. Guillaume Briand is there. And Pat Vellner is in, 20th unofficially for him. Enrico Zanoni is across the finish line. Here comes Sam Quant. So a lot that needs to get figured out. All these results right now are unofficial, pending a review of what went on there on that 5-mile bike ride in the second half of the event. Georgios Karavis is across. There's Sam Quant. There's Nick Matthew.
the old custom crop top. Respect. I don't have the abs for that.
Matthew is in. And now Brent Fikowski is still out there on the course. Baden Brown and Heinrich Happelainen also across the finish line.
I think one of the tougher finishes or lower finishes Fikowski has ever had at the CrossFit Games was a Triple G chipper. And a lot of that was actually due to the 100 pull-ups that it started with. And we've seen him struggle with events like Mary, high volume gymnastics in more of a cyclical pulling format. Mary is all about the 15 pull-ups per round. You're talking about 15 to 20 rounds. That's upward to 3. It's upward to 150 to 200 pull-ups in an event, and that might have been the deciding factor for Fikowski's place finishing.
His worst event finish of his career came back in 2016. He finished 39th in the squat clean pyramid.
That was well before Fikowski had upped his strength gains coming into the CrossFit Games. It was actually one of the things that kept him out of the games for years.
Colton Mertens is going to finish ahead of Austin Spencer. All these results are going to be unofficial, as I'm fairly certain things will be changing quite a bit after a review of the scores here. There's Arkason McKelmey, who is in. We have 4 men right now who have yet to cross the finish line. One of them is that man, Tim Paulson. Tudor Magda also out there, as is Cole Griesaber and Arthur Semenov. And here comes Tim Paulson, who qualified under the last chance qualifier, winning that.
Favorite story at Tim Paulson is after the Granite Games, just missing out of qualification there. Got to see him right after, and the first thing he said was, guess I got to qualify online now. A lot of confidence in Tim Paulson. This is definitely an event outside of his wheelhouse, so I'm not really surprised to see him in this position. But, in a well-balanced test across 4 days of competition, some of these outlier athletes are going to get theirs in some form or fashion.
There is Tudor Magda on the left. Magda is in, and here comes Arthur Semenov, who is grabbing at his right hamstring. He's got both of his hammies taped up. The Griesaber is the only man still on the course, and he's about ready to come in. We're still trying to sort through the confusion here. The first 3 athletes to finish were Spencer Pancic, Lazar Jukic, and Ricky Garrard. At one point on that final 5-mile bike, Garrard was 45 seconds back of Yonakoski. So it is very possible that Pancic, Jukic, and Garrard skipped a lap.
I think from what I saw, there's 3 or 4 you could probably throw in the mix there. I mean, I didn't see half the athletes that are in the top 10 in those 2 front Peloton groups that we saw on the first 5 laps and the second 5 laps.
We believe Yonakoski is the winner, but they're going to have to sort through a lot of stuff here to figure out exactly who earns 100 points, and then you have to figure out what you do with the men who didn't finish and how you figure out where they're going to wind up. It's Heinrich Happelainen, Bjorn Carlmusen, and Yonakoski. We saw Pat Vellner, who right now unofficially is listed in 20th place. So Nikki Brazier is down there in the North Park. Nikki, what have you been able to find out?
Yeah, not much, guys, so far. There's a lot of confusion down here. I can tell you that judging is working with scoring to try and figure out exactly who was in the lead. It does appear that there may have been a couple of guys here who skipped a lap. Maybe we didn't see them exactly pull ahead into that leader's position. But again, nothing decided yet so far. We don't exactly know what the leaderboard looks like, but the judging team is working very closely with the scoring team right now to try to figure out exactly what happened here.
Well, as we sort through what happened, it was Roman Krennikov out early, but once again, like we saw with the women, it was the chest to bar pull-ups that made the difference here.
Huge deciding factor, and I think a lot of that had to do with how people navigated the toes to bar. We said it was important to get out early so you don't get lost in the wash in the beginnings, but not at the expense of your ability to do chest to bar pull-ups on the second round. As you see a 4-person team early on, and then it was Medeiros. And then this is when things got off track because Spencer Panchek and Lazar were 100% behind Yonakoski. There was no point in time in which they finished. Ricky Garrard was behind the pack significantly on the first half and did not have the best chest to bar pull-ups in the second half. And you have all these athletes finishing ahead of Yonakoski, who is, it's either that or he did an extra lap. But there is a lot to be decided right now as far as how it shook out. But Sean, the big question is how are they going to assess time penalties, points penalties? I mean, do you, like you said, yes, this happened to Carl Saunders. The judge
but like
waved
you said, big difference between a mile and 3 overhead squats.
Right, mile.
Well, we have a lot to sort through here in Madison. You can go to games.crossfit.com throughout the day to keep posted on everything going on with the overall standings. Teams up next here, the 2022 NOBULL CrossFit Games.